Raw Christian Men's Podcast, tackling the important issues from a biblical perspective.
Welcome back to the Raw Christian Men's Podcast, a place for authentic, real-life discussion on faith, masculinity, and living as a Christian man in today's world. Today's episode will be a little bit different. During past discussions, we've noticed that there's a lot of believers who don't really know a whole lot of Bible stories, or just stories in general from the Bible. So we decided to start a reoccurring series where we can take a few Bible stories, discuss what happened, and what the lessons that we can learn or take away from each story. All right. I'm Brad Martin. I'm here with Kyle and Jim. How are you guys doing?
Doing good.
Doing well.
All right. Well, you guys kind of came up with this idea from Sunday school, right? Like you're just talking and you realize, like, hey, there's some people that maybe aren't as fluent in their Bible,
right?
And I think there are stories that everybody's kind of familiar with because of word of mouth, but then there's a lot of stories that kind of just go over people's heads, like they never kind of either heard about it or they don't reference it a lot in sermons. Yeah. So we really kind of want to dig deep into some of these stories and just kind of figure out, because I think every story in the Bible, you can take something away.
Yeah.
So we want to kind of dig into all of these types of stories. We're not going to go straight from Genesis all the way to Revelation. We're going to mix it up a little bit. We'll take some really well-known stories and we'll take some not so well-known stories and kind of dive into them and see what we can find, what we can take away. All right.
I like this first one. This is an amazing story. They just come out of Egypt, right? God parted the Red Sea. They walked through it, and then God closes the Red Sea over the Egyptian army, smashes them to pieces, saves them, and walks forward.
Can I interrupt you one second?
Go ahead.
I forgot to mention, while we're doing these little quote-unquote series or whatever, they each kind of have a theme. That's why we're kind of bouncing around a little bit throughout the Bible. They each have a theme, and I think the theme for the stories that we're going to cover today is when fear starts to kind of take control or take our eyes off of God. That's the theme that we're going to kind of go with for this episode. So, go ahead.
Yeah. So they just witnessed amazing. God's feeding them manna from heaven. They're witnessing miracles on a daily basis, and so to tee this thing up, you'd think, gosh, if I was there, or would I really believe that God's just going to give us this land, this promised land? And that's what we're going to reference here in the story of the spies.
And I think it's easy to kind of Monday morning quarterback.
Right.
Stories like when you look at Exodus, or the entire book of Exodus, you have all the Israelites. They were delivered out of Egypt by God. They were in slavery for over 400 years. Not only did God use Moses to free them, he led them personally out of Egypt. Mm-hmm. A pillar of smoke, pillar of fire, helped Moses part the Red Sea, provided them manna from heaven, gave them water when they were in the desert and they weren't near any kind of a water source. You have all of these miracles that are taking place constantly, but yet you still have all these instances where they revert back and they start falling back in their old ways. They start not believing. They start questioning and doubting. I can't wrap my mind around when you were literally in the presence of the living God.
Yeah.
And you still have doubts.
You didn't even fight a war to get out. I mean, there was 10 plagues. I mean, the firstborn was killed of Egypt if you didn't put blood over your door. I mean, they've seen all this. They've seen the Egyptians lose their firstborn child without them raising a hand. That's why the Pharaoh lets them go.
Yeah.
I mean, so you look at that and you think, how do you see 10 plagues plus all the other stuff and then come to this point and be like,
yeah, I'm not sure if this is going to work out or not.
Well, and then we have to ask ourselves, how can we know all the stories of the Bible and still have doubts?
Yeah.
Right? Because they didn't know all the future stories. Mm-hmm. They weren't there to see Jesus.
Yeah.
And here we got all the stories. And so I catch myself every time I say, if I were there, no, I'd have been just like them.
I want to talk about something at the end of the episode, but try to help me remember.
Okay.
I want to reference what you just said about they didn't have everything right there in front of them. We do. I don't want to sidetrack the whole episode, but I do want to say something at the end. So,
Right.
sorry, but there's so many. I would say there's so many examples just within Exodus where you could refer to, like Exodus and Numbers. But the story that we're going to talk about particularly, you can find in Numbers chapters 13 and 14. The Israelites were promised this land. Like God said, I will lead you out of Egypt. I will give this land to you. It's, it's a land of abundance.
Yeah.
He's going to provide for them, for his people. And then when they get there, which is the land of Canaan, they get there, it's occupied already. So they send out 12 spies, right?
Yep.
So
You mind if I read the first
go ahead and read.
scripture here?
Yes.
Let's kick it off. So then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Send out for yourself men so that they may spy out the land of Canaan, which I'm going to give to the sons of Israel. You shall send a man from each of their fathers' tribes, every one a leader among them. So Moses sent them from the wilderness of Paran at the command of the Lord, all the men who were heads of the sons of Israel. So they get together, they say, we're going to go check out this land and the occupants, which God's already promised to them, and see what it's like. Let's just spy it out.
Yep.
Make sure we know what we're doing.
So when they get the 12 spies go out and they come back, 10 of the spies, they came back and they were so focused on the inhabitants of the land, right? They were there was a bunch of fortified cities in the area. They were the descendants of Anak. There's believed, or for that people, there were a lot of giants and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they see fortified cities and towns. They see all these giant humans walking around.
Yeah.
And they're scared.
Yeah. The Anak was, I believe he's a descendant of the Nephilim.
Yeah.
So, the giants that walk. So that is mentioned in your Bible. If you go through the story, you'll see that the Nephilim, that's part of their bloodline that's still there.
Yeah.
Through Anak.
So they just look and they're seeing, all these obstacles and they can't see past that. Mm-hmm. So they're blinded by fear. They're thinking there's no way, even though God just led us to this, and everything that we just talked about, it got them through that, and they get here to the promised land, and it's occupied by these giants and these fortified cities, and they can't see past that.
Yeah.
But there's two of the 12, Joshua and Caleb. They are able to look past the fortified cities. They look past these giants that are, that they would have to fight. And they can see this land flowing with milk and honey, the Bible says, right?
Yeah.
They just see everything good that God would be providing for them. And they come back and they're basically saying, we have God on our side. There's no way we can't defeat these people.
Yeah, he's told us this is what the land will be and this is yours. And they believed him full out.
Yeah. And there's no fear because they already believe God is bigger than anything else on this earth. And there's no fear because of their faith, mm-hmm. Whereas the others, we talked last week about don't be led by comfort and fear. The others are looking at it from a human perspective, not from a spiritual or a godly perspective. Mm-hmm. They're looking at it from what can we do to make this happen rather than what will God do for us.
Yeah.
And that's where I started off saying they just watched him part the Red Sea and crush the whole Egyptian army, and I'm thinking to myself, why would they not see that God can do that again in this land of giants?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the 10 that were so focused on the negative, they couldn't see past all the fortified cities of the giants, and they were so scared. They were spreading this throughout all of the Israelites. And the Israelites sided with the 10 saying that it was impossible task. They couldn't go and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and that's what happens when gossip spreads.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's what it was. It's gossip, and they came back and they started whispering in the ears of their fellow tribesmen, and that gossip spread like wildfire before anybody could think this thing through, and before Caleb and Joshua could make a more forceful effort. I mean, they were already making a forceful effort, but you spread that kind of gossip through 10 of the 12 tribes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that fear just consumes everybody.
Yep.
You got 80% of the spies going around telling everybody this is an impossible task.
Right.
And grumbling and getting the Israelites all up in arms. And they're like, well, it sounds like we're going to our death, not to a land of promise and milk and honey.
Yeah.
Seems odd. Seems odd when we talk about everything that just happened, but
yeah.
Well, but we have to remember, and this is where I get caught up in it the same. We talk about it in our class, but we read this like it's one day to the next, 1 week to the next, but it could have been years in between. It could have been decades in between some of the stuff that happens in these stories that we're reading. It could have been, it's not like God crushed them through the Red Sea and then the next week they're knocking on the door of the Promised Land. They had to travel a good distance. They had to come around the bottom of Egypt and come and turn the corner and come back up, around that part of the water and come all the way around. So that there was some journey there.
I have seen I don't want to get sidetracked, but I have seen some, like I say videos. I've looked into a little bit, like the scholars they believe, and we don't know this for sure because nobody was there, but they tend to believe that it would have been, a matter of days, maybe a couple weeks, if they from that route that they expected going from Egypt to Canaan.
I've seen it as few as 12 days they could have made it. But you think about this, and we talked about this when we were studying Paul and Acts. You got all these tents you're setting up, and you got all this stuff. So you can walk a good amount of time, but then you got to have camp, then you got to cook the food, then you got to feed the babies, then you got instead of making 20 miles a day, maybe they're only making 5 because they got to take down all the tents, pack up all the stuff, move forward. So call it 12 days, call it 40 days, call it something in between. It's not years, right? That's what it looks like, but we don't know for sure.
But what we do know for sure though is because of their fear, because of the doubt that spread, there was a punishment dealt out by God because of their lack of faith. And that punishment was, it turned their, what could have been or should have been a relatively short journey into 40 years in the desert. Right? Wandering in the wilderness for 40 years.
It's a very severe punishment, and it's very similar to the one Cain got when he killed Abel.
And then one of the pieces of the punishment was that God said that no man, basically of fighting age, that could have went into the land of Canaan when they originally got there, said no man from fighting age
20
or older, which is about 20 years or older, would see the Promised Land. Right. So they wandered the desert until all of those men were dead.
Yep. And the reason they did that was because from their own words, they had spoken, it would have been better for us to perish in the desert.
Yes.
And so because of that, the Lord put that on them and said, I will give you what you asked for. And so they actually spoke their own punishment right over their lives.
It tends to happen, too. It happened to David.
Yeah. You got to be careful what you say because the Lord might hold you to it.
Yeah.
So.
But what were you going to say? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that was exactly what I was going to say. It's 20 years and younger. It's the first time we kind of get an age of accountability there a little bit on some of that. Like people are always wondering, like children and whatever. Well, he made a decision there at 20 and under. You weren't old enough to make that decision consciously, I guess, or to be held accountable for it. You would get to see the Promised Land. And then the fact that, they spoke it over themselves. I think that's really important to watch what you say in your life, because what you speak over your life could end up being something that you stand in front of Jesus someday and go, well, why did this happen? I didn't. And he says, this is what you said. Remember this 2 years earlier? Remember this a week before? This happened because of what you spoke into your own life.
Yeah.
So I think it's real important to think about your words real carefully, and this story really shows that, because what they were grumbling and what they were saying, they literally were speaking over, and they didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
So now they're wanderers in the desert. God has to provide food for them. God has to provide water for them, and they're living a miserable, meager existence with no way out of it. I mean, that's how severe the punishment is. And I got to think they were remembering every day
Oh, yeah.
that they asked for this.
Yeah.
I mean, think about being a 20-year-old man and just wandering in the desert and barely getting your food to eat every day. And then, you're living 40 years, so you're living till you're 60, and then you die. I mean, that's a pretty stout punishment, but it was a pretty stout sin, too, to go against God.
Yeah, and he makes mention of all the wonders. I just read it. So he was making mention that you doubted me even though I did all these wonders. So he's like, there's no reason for you to be doubting me.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen it firsthand. You're not somebody who hasn't. Everybody that was there had seen it firsthand. It wasn't maybe, did you hear that happen? It wasn't that. You saw it happen, every single thing. Everything we mentioned in the beginning, every person that's dying off in the desert saw it all happen. They have no excuse, not one.
Yeah.
So age was the only thing that saved some of them, was they just weren't old enough.
They weren't old enough to be taken.
And then two that actually had faith.
Yeah.
But other than that.
So let's break it down a little bit. Like, let's talk about what people tend to miss, because it's easy to focus on like the obvious, right?
Yeah.
There's always things out of these stories where people tend to miss. So their biggest failure, they weren't lying about what they saw, right? Yeah. There really were giants in the area. There really were heavily fortified cities. The enemy they were going to facing was pretty terrifying, but it wasn't that they were lying to the Israelites because they were afraid of going in there, trying to make it seem like they're embellishing it or worse off than it really was. It was their biggest failure was that they were letting their fear be an authority over them rather than letting God be the authority.
Yeah.
Because God said, I will deliver you into this land.
Yeah, he tells Moses that.
But yet
they got no weaponry.
Yeah.
Right? They got no way to fight.
Yeah.
And so that's the flip side of this is, they left Egypt with the clothes on their back, so to speak, but when they were in Egypt, they weren't allowed to have all kinds of weapons.
Yeah. And they got out.
What's that?
And they got out. Yeah.
But they're looking at it from a human perspective again, and don't we sometimes do that? We've got all the stories and we've got all the promises of God, but we look to tomorrow and we get afraid sometimes, and we look at it and don't know how that is possibly going to turn out, and that fear can be debilitating to us. And God's saying, just trust me. Just trust me. You don't know what's going to happen, but I do, so just trust me.
Fear is a cancer that spreads quickly. And you can look at this. There were hundreds of thousands of Israelites that came out of Egypt. Yeah. And you had 10 people that were so afraid that they were able to spread that fear to basically all of the Israelites. Enough that we know that it affected the outcome of the story, right? There could have been, statistically, there probably were some people like, no, I'm going to side with Joshua and Caleb. But there were enough people that gave in to the fear of 10 people that it made them, they were considering going back to Egypt. They were considering, let's get rid of Moses and pick a new leader. They were thinking about all this other stuff because they were so focused on being afraid rather than trusting God to do what he said he was going to do.
Yeah, and I do believe that in this, as you read through, there's a part where I think they're pleading for God to forgive them, the people in there, and he does forgive them, but yet he still requires punishment, which is why they wander. So sometimes I thought that was interesting reading through it. It was like, they should be annihilated. They should just be wiped out because they've had so little faith in me. 10 times over, I think he says they basically mock him, basically. And it's like, they should just be wiped out. And then they get pleaded for that they would be forgiven. And he does, but he doesn't take away all punishment. Yeah. So there was a punishment that followed. They wandered.
Well,
so
he's a he's a merciful God, but
Yes.
he's also just. I mean,
Yeah.
there has to be a just punishment for sin.
Well, and
at the time,
other times while they're wandering in the desert, and I might not have the timeline right, but the one guy takes something, instead of giving it to the priest, he takes it back to his clan and he buries it, right?
Yep.
And then they all get called forward, and then God wipes them out. He just kills them all.
yeah.
So there are times when he
Yes.
does
Yeah.
do that, and he just says, "No, enough.
Enough's
You're done."
enough. Yeah.
I mean,
done.
we see it multiple times within the story of Exodus, like between the story where they buried some of the treasure. I believe in this story, like some of the immediate people that went out and like the tribal leaders, they were wiped out.
Yeah. The 10
immediately.
spies that were wiped out as a showing of, look, it's serious what they did.
And then when Moses went up to the mountaintop for 40 days, and they were starting to lose hope, and then they fashioned a calf like a golden calf, God wiped out a good portion of them then immediately. I mean, so there is instances where he does issue out a just punishment of death, and it's instantaneous.
Yeah.
But then there's also like, hey, I'm being merciful, but you still have to, or there still has to be payment for the sin that was committed. And because this is pre-Jesus, that just punishment falls on us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So what does this particular story teach us about God, or what does it reveal to us about God? He was asking for our trust in him and his presence to be greater to us than the fear of the opposition, right? So just knowing that he's there and that he's going to do what he's going to do what he said he was going to do, we need to trust in that more than what we see standing in front of us.
Yeah. Lots of good stories in the Bible. Pick it up every once in a while.
Yeah.
Especially if you haven't read some of those stories in a long time, it is good to pick it up and reread. And you may have forgotten about the 12 spies.
Lastly, real quick, and then what does this mean for us? Like, what can we take away from it? I think a lot of times, and I think Jim kind of alluded to it a little bit ago, we allow the situation in front of us to be so paralyzing or so blinding that it takes our focus away from what God actually said is going to happen. He's made promises to us, but yet we get so paralyzed by what we see directly in front of us that we forget, the God that created everything, who's actually in control, has promised something different. And we just get so focused on the one small thing that's in front of us that we let that dictate our fear or dictate how we're going to act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the next story, we're going to go to Judges chapter 6. And there was, excuse me, I might need some help because I'm not 100% polished up on the story. I do know like the basics, but we're going to go, and you may or may not have heard the name Gideon, but this is a time where the land of Israel was being oppressed by I don't know how to pronounce it.
Midianites?
Midianites, okay. But the land of Midian, all right? And there was a person named Gideon who was actually thrashing wheat, trying to it's a process like getting the seed separated from the wheat and everything like that. But he was thrashing the wheat in the wine press, and he was just trying to do it on the down low, right? Because he didn't want the Midianites to see what he was doing, because they would come in, they would probably steal from him.
So he's hiding.
Possibly kill. He's hiding.
Yeah.
He's trying to do everything in secret. While he's doing this, there's an angel of the Lord came to him, addressed him, asked him why he was hiding. He addressed Gideon, who was hiding. He addressed him as like a mighty warrior. Excuse me, sorry. And Gideon's response wasn't like, getting all, confident. Oh, I'm a mighty warrior. This is obviously an angel from God. He starts making all these excuses of why that doesn't make sense. Like he's saying, the Midianites are oppressing the people of Israel, and where's God at? He should, why isn't he protecting us? Why is he letting this happen? How could Gideon be a warrior? Like, how could he possibly help save Israel when he is from the weakest clan, and he is the weakest person from that clan, or the least important person in that from that clan? So God responds with probably one of the most important lines that we need to remember. His response is, "I will be with you, and you will destroy the Midianites as if they were fighting against one man."
Yeah.
But that biggest part right there at the very beginning, "I will be with you."
God's going to fight the battle, and he's picking the least family of Manasseh, and he's picking the least of that family to show his power, not some mighty warrior from the Israelites.
Yeah.
And that's real important, that I will be with you, because in the story we just talked about with the 12, they tried to go back up, and Moses is like, "No, God's not with us. They're gonna beat you down and whatever." And that's exactly what they do. Once God leaves you, then you're in trouble. So and this right here, when he says, "I'll be with you,"
it goes on. There's more to the story. He does obey.
Well, he's got to test God first.
He doesn't initially do it, but he does obey, and then but he also does it like under the cover of darkness in secret, because he still kind of has, I don't know if doubts or like a little bit of fear.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to do it. I'm afraid, but I'm going to do it, but partly on my terms. But
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. But yeah, his fear is instantly removed. So we sometimes tell biblical stories as though God called somebody and they're immediately like, "Yes, I'm going to go do it." That happens sometimes, but other times it doesn't. Look at Gideon. Look at Moses.
Yep.
When Moses is standing in front of the burning bush and God tells him, "Hey, you're going to go lead my people out of Egypt," he's like, I'm not. I'm able to do this. Like I'm slow to speech. I stutter a lot. I'm a wanted man. I murdered somebody there. He's given all these reasons why he shouldn't be doing it, and God's like, "Nope, you're the one." So I mean, that's something that we can relate to as humans, right?
Yeah.
If you feel called by God to do something, how many times you're like, "Well, surely you're not talking about me, because of X, Y, Z."
Well, talking to David Small last week, and he's talking about how he doesn't feel prepared to be in Burma.
Yeah.
If you listened to the podcast last week, and he's talking about, people shooting at him and all this stuff, but God prepared him to go. And so when he prepares someone, even if they feel inadequate, you're prepared. I mean, and we're going to see in these stories, it's over and over and over again. Every time he picks somebody, they're going to do well because God's with them.
So God essentially is telling Gideon, like, "I want you to go in," because at this time, this is when Israel's losing their way. You have a lot of the people are starting to worship Baal and Asherah and all that. So God tells Gideon, "I want you to go and destroy that altar, the altar that was built up for Baal.
Right.
And I want you to chop down the Asherah pole." And these idols that people are worshiping, that the Israelites are worshiping.
Yeah.
It's like, "I want you to go do that." And
that's Gideon's dad who built those.
Yeah.
And so God tells him, "Go get your dad's bulls and do it with his bulls."
Oh, and build up an altar for me,
Yeah.
and slaughter the bull as a sacrifice to me.
Yeah.
And he does it, but he's still afraid of his family. He's still afraid of the people in the tribe and then that town. So he does it under the cover of darkness. And wakes up, or everybody wakes up and they sees this and they get all mad. But they
want to kill him.
They want to kill him. But the moral of the story is, like, even though he was afraid, he still obeyed God.
Yeah. And his assumption that they would want to kill him was right, because they did. They did want to kill him,
but they didn't.
But they weren't able to. So that's that protection.
But yeah, that's definitely a story that I would say a lot of people aren't overly familiar with.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something that you should read. There's a lot that you can take away from it. Mm-hmm. So what does this reveal about God? So God didn't define Gideon by where Gideon was at, right? Or where he was hiding. Like, he was essentially being a coward.
Yeah.
He didn't look at Gideon and say, I can't use this, right? He saw Gideon by what he would become through obedience.
Yeah.
So, yeah, now he's hiding while he's thrashing the wheat, but he knew that if he obeyed God, he would be doing so much more.
And so after he tears down the altar, he sacrifices the bulls. He says, okay, he sees God and he's protected. He's not killed by the people. He sees that God's doing things in his life, but he says, hey, Lord, let me ask you this. If I bring the fleece out, and I will put fleece of wool on the threshing floor, if there is dew on the fleece only and it is dry all around, then I know that you will deliver Israel. And he does the reverse. He says first he does the fleece, and if it's dew on it but not around, and then he does the reverse. He said there's dew around, not on the fleece. And then he tests God about 3 times in there.
Yeah, and he asks, don't get mad at me.
Yeah. Let me ask one more time.
Yeah, I know you just showed me this, but don't get mad at me. Can you do it in reverse now? Just as a double check.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he's saying. Yeah. I mean, it really is. It's like us. We're like, just give me one more sign. Just one more sign, even though he's already given him what he.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Gideon goes out and says, okay, I'll get together something like 30,000 troops, 30,000 men. Yeah. God says, I don't think so. We're going to separate them and tell anybody that doesn't want to come, they can go back, and like 27,000 of them go back. There's 3,000 left. God says, no, that's still too many. Let's take them down and separate them. And that's where they lap from the water, the ones that lap like a dog or the ones that don't, either way, you pick those, and those are going to be the 300 you can take with you.
And there was 300 that lapped up from the cup of their hand like a dog, and he took them, and he's, part of it was the Lord was like, what glory could I have if you take 27,000 people in there? So he takes 300. So the only way that you can say it's anything is that God did it.
Yeah.
And they're not even going to have to strike the people, right? They're going to march around the city.
Yeah.
They're going to blow the trumpets.
And there's going to be a terrible fear within those people. And
if I'm going off too much, just cut me off. But then so 7 days they march around the city, and then on the 7th day when they blast the trumpets, instead of Gideon and his 300 going in and killing the people are thrown into chaos and kill each other.
Yeah.
That's how God takes care of this for them.
So the 300 didn't even need the swords, and it just shows. I mean, I sat there as I was reading that story today. I read it today, and I was like, you look at what they're, Moses and, all the Egyptians or the Israelites should have just listened, and they would have been right into the promised land. And those giants might have fought against themselves. We don't even know, but instead, and we see it with Gideon here, who says the same thing. He's like, he's a little bit nervous, a little bit scared.
And that's something that we need to take away from it, is that courage isn't not being afraid, right? It's not the absence of fear. Courage is, I'm afraid, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
I'm going to obey God anyway.
Yep.
And he had to go through several tests of God to make sure, he knew what God was asking, and God's got to do this for him to confirm, little old me, you want me, and God does that, right? He keeps doing that to build up Gideon's faith and to build up Gideon's determination to follow him by doing the little things that Gideon asks, and that's all the stories throughout the Bible. If you read through them, how God's building up His people before they come to the big test.
Yeah. I think I want to bring that around to what happens today, because I think exactly the same thing happens today. And I keep bringing up David Small, but he impressed upon all 3 of us last week, what the work he's doing. But he said in his testimony that, and most of the people I know that have a testimony, they have all these little small tests they do, and he could only leave the base when he was in the military, just to go to worship services. And for 8 weeks, he said, it spoke right to his heart. And so it was like the first time it was like, no. The second time, I think he left.
He walked outside.
He's like, this can't be, I can't, speaking right to his heart. And so, the third time, the fourth time, until he finally was like, okay, I can't deny God anymore. So that still happens today. It just happens on an individual level because Jesus is an individual God that takes care of you one little step at a time. So it's okay to have those moments of, are you really talking to me, Jesus? Are you really, here we see Gideon doing the same thing. He's like, I'm believing you. You sent an angel to me. I'm believing you, but could you just show me just a little bit more? I think that's okay. I've seen that in my life. I think all of us who pray and then something happens and we're like, okay, we do it again. Something else happens and you're like, okay. And you start to have a little bit more faith, a little bit more strength in your walk, and that's okay until you're over in Burma for 12 years, which, that's what happened. So just wanted to bring that full around to the same things go on today. So these stories will hit home as you're walking with Christ. Yeah,
humankind is the same today as it was back then. I mean, people still have the same emotions, the same thought processes. We're still made in God's image and likeness, and we're going to come up against the same fears, the same worries, the same discomfort. The different things that happen in our life are going to be very similar, and this is where we have to know the word enough to recognize when God is doing something in our life, where we can see it's actually happening and not looking back 10 years and going, oh, that was God. How do we recognize it in the moment? And if he's given us these stories so we could see how he is and see how he treats us, and we're more able to recognize him around us because of that.
Yeah, I think that's real good. The more you walk with your Lord, I think you're going to start finding, if you've fallen in love with Jesus and his Father, you see these stories differently than when you're fighting against them, I think. Because when I was younger, I was kind of in it seems like he's kind of a harsh God, or, there's some things in there. But like today, we're reading Genesis in our Bible study, and we're talking about Cain and Abel, and Cain has killed Abel, and yet the Lord is still, not going to kill him. He's given him some mercies and marking him so no one else will kill him, and he's very calm with him, and it's like, even though he's done this terrible deed, and it's like God never changed. He's still gentle. He's still, he's still rebuking of his son, of his creation, and the same way he is with us. So it's like it never changed. And as you go back and look at these stories and your walk with Jesus, you realize the Lord was the Lord then, and he's the Lord now, and he doesn't treat any of us different. He still demands the same thing. We know that we're not supposed to sin now. He's telling Cain, you must master and not sin. Otherwise, it's wanting to pull you down. So we just read that today in our Bible study. It's like he has not changed. His love for us hasn't changed. And yet there's still disobedience that gets punished. But as you read through these stories in the Bible, it's totally different once you've accepted Christ and you're walking with him. I think you go back and look at him and go, oh, he was trying to be merciful. He was trying to get you to see, your blindness is what led you away. Yeah. To the point of where it was like, okay, I got to do something about this. So. Yeah.
So I think the next story we'll talk about is, you can find it in 1 Kings. It covers chapters 18 and 19. And it's the prophet Elijah. And I think we've covered this recently, but we'll go over it again for a refresher. But it's showing some extreme highs and extreme lows. All right. So starts out, Elijah's up on the mountaintop with, there's a bunch of prophets of Baal, and obviously Elijah being a prophet of God. And they've been debating like, hey, who's the real God? And it's like, well, we're going to have a duel, essentially. Like, we'll build an altar, and we'll each build an altar, and whoever's God sets that altar on fire, then we'll know that is the true God. So prophets of Baal, they do theirs first. They spend, I think, a few days. Like they build the altar. They're doing all these sacrifices and these ceremonies, and they're doing all this stuff, and nothing happens. So Elijah's like, they built the altar, and like, all right, dump a bunch of water on it.
Yeah.
And then so they dump a bunch of water on it. I bypassed some stuff, sorry. So while the prophets of Baal are doing all this stuff, I mean, Elijah's getting a little cocky, and he's like to the point where he's just straight up mocking them, you know.
Scream louder.
Yeah, maybe they're asleep.
Maybe he's asleep. Yell a little louder. Maybe he's using the bathroom. You know, did he go on vacation doing all this stuff?
Yeah,
and he's just ripping into him. And so it comes to, you know, Elijah's turn, and he's like, all right, builds up this altar, dump a bunch of water on it, completely soaking it with water. And he prays and calls down fire from God, and boom.
Yeah.
Altar just ignites, and hot fire. Yeah. And so it's enough that all the prophets of Baal are essentially bowing down and trying to worship God at this point. They know that the God that we worship is the one true one. So Elijah orders all these prophets of Baal to be killed for their blasphemy. And all this chaos is going on. Well, Jezebel, which is the queen of the time, she hears about what Elijah did to the prophets of Baal, and she sends out this warning to him saying, may God strike me down dead if by this time tomorrow I have not killed you.
Yeah.
So sends this death threat out to him. So he goes from...
And she's got the power to do it.
Yes.
She's got the armies to do it. She's got the control to do it.
Yes. So he goes from witnessing all this power of God to getting a death threat from one woman.
And he's bragging on God pretty hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's fearing for his life to the point where he just takes off running. And he's running and running. And it gets to the point where he's just exhausted. He's sitting under his tree, and he's praying to God. He's like, it's just better that I was never even born. Like, will you just kill me now? Yeah. And so he's going from this extreme high of proving that God is the one true God to down to this low pit of despair because he thinks that Jezebel is going to kill him.
Yeah.
You can't see past what's in front of him. You can't see past the physical realm to the spiritual realm that God's already got under control.
Yep.
Yeah. Was it the one thing I did in the story was like, you know, obviously Elijah is the only prophet that worshiped God, but the other prophets, there's like 400 or 450 or something like that. There's
over 400.
Yeah, there's over 400 of them, and he had them slaughtered. And there was a part that I kind of misread in it as far as like the slaughtering. Was he supposed to have them slaughtered, or was that something he decided to do?
Ooh, I'd have to look back on that. I don't remember.
I don't think he had any like repercussions from it.
No, I know he didn't. I know he did have them slaughtered. He had them all taken down and slaughtered. But did he have to do that, or was that something that God ordered him to do? I didn't know on that one, so I didn't know if that's why he ended up fleeing. I think that is why he's fleeing, because he slaughtered him, and that gets back to Jezebel, and then she wants to have him killed, the same as he had killed the prophets of Baal. So I didn't know on that part. That's one question I had on there was I wonder if
he pulled a Saul and tried to take it upon himself.
Yeah, and he did something he wasn't. Maybe he shouldn't have had them all killed and been merciful. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he knew in that moment to flee. That's just a question I had. The story is really good. Yeah. You know, it's one of those where it's like, I mean, he did have him slaughtered, and then he ended up having to run, and he's like, it's better to be. He goes from bragging all over God can do this, and I mean, dousing his wood in all the water and making like a pit around his sacrifice and drenching it all, and it says the fire just ate up all the water and everything. I mean, the prophets of Baal were bowing down and like, he is God, you know. And so he goes from that to running, and it would be better if I was never born. And it's like, what the heck, dude? You went from like high and mighty to you're cowering under a tree. It's like.
So what do people usually miss? Did you find something real quick, Jim?
Yeah, I just it doesn't say God told him to have them killed. He ordered them killed because they were blaspheming against God. And then he went back to Ahab and said, go eat and drink, for there's a sound of the roar of a heavy shower. and Ahab went off, and then Elijah went up to the top of Carmel, crouched down on the earth, and put his face between his knees, and it goes on from there. So I don't think it was a consequence of God telling him or not telling him.
Yeah.
I think it's a consequence of he smoked him.
Yeah.
And now Jezebel, who wants control and doesn't
She's angry.
she wants to take it back. So
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Little side note.
So, can we take away from this? That spiritual victory does not make you immune to exhaustion, discouragement, or fear. Right? Yeah. Elijah had an extremely good spiritual victory.
Yeah.
Like extreme high, but yet then he was able to succumb to the fear of Jezebel having him killed.
Yeah.
So that is a fault of ours as humans, right? We're so nearsighted that we forget, hey, I had this huge spiritual victory because I trusted in God to do what he promised, and he did, and he's faithful. And then I see something and I'm afraid, and I forget everything that I just was preaching about God being faithful and just, and
and God's right there with him, trying to restore him, trying to teach him, trying to help him. Right?
Yeah.
He grows up the shade tree, and then a worm eats the base, and it goes away. And he said, "I can provide, and I can take it away."
Yeah.
So he's still trying to show him that he is God. Even at this point, he's not just dismissing him totally. He's trying to rebuild him.
Yeah. And if you look at God's response, I think it's pretty interesting, because he could very well have been like, "What are you doing? You saw the power that I displayed for you.
Yeah.
And then now you're cowering under a shade tree. Do you not think that I would protect you from one woman?" He could have been rebuking him instantly, but instead he sent angels to take care of him, to let him get some sleep, gave him some food and some water to drink. Did this for I think 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
To basically where he was able to get his strength and his his energy back up.
Yeah.
And then he was able to say, "Hey, what's going on? What are you doing? Did you forget who I am?" So that's a pretty interesting response. He could have immediately just went and just ripped into him right away. But he's like, "You know what? Let's get you back to where you need to be first."
Yeah.
Right. And God appears to him. I was just reading it again just to make sure, but God appears to him because, Elijah just experienced all this, and now he's hiding out in a cave also, that part of this story. And God's like, "No, I sent you. You need to go stand on the mountain before the Lord." And then God cloaks him as he comes by.
Yeah.
So he doesn't die. And, the Lord's telling him, go back, return. And on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, when you have arrived, you shall anoint Hazael king over Aram. And so he's given him more instruction on, hey, man, you got more work to do. You can't just come out here and cower just because Jezebel says she wants to do something. I got plenty for you to do. So not only is he giving him, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead on you, not only is he giving him rest and food and water and comfort there, he's also going, hey, it's time to get going again. We need to move on here. We got more work.
And that teaches us something important about God, is that, he does deal with Elijah firmly, right? He does, he's demonstrating to him hey, I can provide for you, and I can also take it away. He's like, you need to be doing this stuff. You need to obey. You need to listen to what I'm telling you to do. But he's doing it compassionately. He's not sitting there dealing with them like he dealt with the prophets of Baal.
Yeah.
He's like, I have made you a prophet of me, for me. You're supposed to be doing this for me. It's firm, but it's compassionate.
Yeah.
And it's also displaying that just because Elijah succumbed to his fear and he kind of cowered away for a while, or he messed up, it doesn't, or God didn't discard him because of it. He didn't say, well, I gave you this mission and you cowered away from it, so I'm done with you. He doesn't do that.
Yeah, I don't think Elijah, though, goes against him. He just falls to his own fears.
Yeah.
I think that's a difference.
There's a difference.
There's a difference between the Israelites that were led out of Egypt, as they were almost going against God, where I think Elijah just got fearful. And
he forgot to trust in God.
To trust in him. And one thing that Jim said...
Trust him, but he succumbed to his fear enough that he didn't. He was blinded so much that he didn't trust in God.
Yeah.
Whereas the Israelites, that's a good point, because the Israelites were completely they were turning from God, like to the point where they were worshiping the gods from Egypt that they'd known for their whole life.
There was a different turn than what Elijah did. But one thing that Jim mentioned was when he tells him to go out to the front of the cave, and we're talking about how God handles it, and the way I read it was there's this storm that comes by, and this wind that comes by, and this earthquake that comes by, and each time it says, and the Lord was not in those, and it says, and the Lord was not in those, and this earthquake, and the Lord was not in those. But then finally when he comes to him in a whisper, and it's a gentle voice that guides him. And so even though he's showing him, because he tells him the Lord's going to pass by, and so he does all these things in front of him, showing him that I can do all these things. And then when he talks to him, it's this gentle, now you know who I am. Go do what I say. And it's like, to me, when you mentioned that, I thought, man, how can I forget that? I just read it just an hour or two ago. And I was like, that's amazing to think that that's how he was dealing with Elijah in that moment. It's like, not real harshly, not real, the same thing we see kind of with Cain, giving him those options. When he didn't give the right kind of offering, he's dealing with him kindly and gently. And, when we talk about the fruit of the Spirit, you have to remember that our Lord is gentle and kind. And to be around him, it would be easy to think that wrath wouldn't come from him. I think that's something I think we all need to understand, that the fruit of the Spirit is from him. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where if you're around him, you're going to be like, man, he is so peaceful, so calm. How could he ever bring wrath? You know what I mean? How could he ever destroy, the destruction of eternal wrath is hard to comprehend when you're in his presence, I think. But yet we know that can be. And he shows Elijah by doing that, yes, I have all these abilities to do all these things. So I thought that was real neat. I enjoyed the stories, rereading them again, because I see it from a different perspective sometimes now. And I'm like, it's amazing how he handles some of these things.
And I have to apologize. I mixed my stories. The part where the tree grew up and the worm ate it was a different story. It was the juniper tree he was under, and you said that.
Are you thinking of Jonah?
I don't remember.
Because I know Jonah,
I just knew he was under a tree. I knew Elijah was under a tree, and I thought that's the one where God raised it up for him, but it was already there. So
we might have been thinking about Jonah.
There was a bush.
Because Jonah was sitting under a shade tree, mad that God saved Nineveh.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, he was sitting in the sun, and then God grew up this bush and provided him shade, and then he had it wither away. He said, see, I can provide and I can take it away.
Yeah. So I mixed stories there. My apologies.
That's all right.
There goes our credibility.
Yeah.
No. All right. So the next story, I think it's going to be more well-known. It's out of the New Testament. If we look at Mark chapter 4, and you can probably find them in typically verses, I'll say typically, 35 to 41. But this is where Jesus and the disciples are in the boat, and Jesus he calms the storm, right? So that's...
Let me go ahead and read this one. Is that all right?
Yeah.
All right. So on the day when evening came, he said to them, let us go over to the other side. Leaving the crowd, they took him along with them in the boat, just as he was, and just as he was, and other boats were with him. And there arose a fierce gale of wind. Am I on the right stuff?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Fierce gale of wind, and the waves were breaking over the boat so much that the boat was already filling up. Jesus himself is in the stern asleep, on the cushion, and they woke him and said, "Teacher, you do not care that we are perishing?" He got up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Hush, be still." And the wind died down, and it became perfectly calm. And he said to them, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They became very much afraid and said to one another, "Who is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?"
So they're in the boat, they're crossing, big storm gets whipped up, and all the disciples are freaking out, and Jesus is taking a nap in the back of the boat.
Yeah. Kyle and I were just on a sailing trip a couple weeks ago. We were in some pretty heavy wind and sea, and it was 20 plus mile an hour knots, and it was 6 foot rolling waves, and Kyle and I are hanging on, and I looked over at Captain Paul, and Captain Paul's just sitting there with this big old smile on his face, just having a good old time, like it's nothing.
Yeah, he said, "This is sailing."
Yeah, he said, "This is the best part, fellas."
And we're a little puckering.
Yeah, we're hanging on to that wheel, trying to keep that sucker straight. When you come up over a swell, it turns one way. When you go down, it turns the other, and you got to fight back and forth to keep a straight course.
Yeah.
And here we are, and it was fun. Don't get me wrong, but I think of that. I mean that example of Jesus just sitting in the back, just taking a nap. Ain't no big deal.
Yeah, this will be over. Don't worry about it. We had the foot braces out for us, though.
Yeah.
They could flip up out of the floor. Otherwise, you'd be sliding across.
I mean, we were heeling over. We were at about a 45. Yeah. We were moving. We were doing 7 to 8 knots, and we were rolling and bouncing and moving. And I mean, it was crazy. It was fun, but I can imagine that they're in worse than that. And Jesus is like, "But I've seen way worse than this. So what are you worried about?
Yeah.
Let me just, hey, hush, be still." To the wind, right?
Yeah. He's probably thinking, "Haven't you been with me all this time?
Yeah.
If you're with me, do you really think I'm going to let you perish?"
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that's what he's telling them.
Well, not just that. Like, you've been with him for how long at this point? You know who he is.
Who he is.
And you see him sleeping in the boat. You'd think that would, again, this is all us Monday morning quarterbacking, but like, you see Jesus sleeping in the back of the boat. You think, oh, we must be good.
Yeah.
We should be fine.
Yeah.
If he's not worried, I shouldn't be worried.
But you got a couple of fishermen in the group, and they've been in seas like this before, and the boat's taking on water, and they've seen boats sink. And so their reality is, I'm looking at what the world sees. I'm looking at the physical realm, not the spiritual. And Jesus has got no concern because he knows the spiritual realm.
And not only does like the fear of, they've experienced it, they've seen it happen before, so they know what is likely to happen if it continues, as far as the boat capsizing and them drowning. But it causes them not just to worry about that. Like, the fear makes them scared for their lives, but what do they ask Jesus? Like, do you not even care?
Yeah.
Like, they question if Jesus even cares about them.
Yeah. Instead of what is going, "Hey guys, do you think we ought to wake Jesus up and let him know this is going on so that we can get this taken care of?" They didn't wake him up like that. They're like, "Do you not even care?
We're going to die.
We're going to die."
And you're just sitting here like it's no big deal.
And how often do we do that today, where like you'll hear people, they're going through some struggles in their life, and they're like, "Man, does God even care? Does he even love me? Does he even know that I'm going through this? Does he even care that any of this is going on?" And it's all because of our own fear. So what does this story reveal about God? Well, first it tells us, Jesus has authority over everything.
Yeah.
If he's able to calm the sea and calm the wind by simply just telling it to be calm, telling it to quiet down.
Yeah, he can sleep right through a storm that must be absolutely brutal because he has no fear of anything because he created all of it. It's like, this is fine, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And he needed rest. They needed to get away from the crowd.
He's like, "I'm tired. I'm resting."
And one other thing is that just because he's quiet doesn't mean that he's not there. That's something that we need to remember.
Yeah.
He was still in the boat with them. He wasn't going to let anything happen to him.
Yeah.
But because he was sleeping, because he wasn't actively, there to help calm them down or to, calm the storm down, they took that as basically he had abandoned them.
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
Yeah.
so what? Oh, go ahead.
And he actually rebuked them right after that, right?
Mm-hmm.
you have little faith. That's not the way it reads this time, but he's constantly saying, you have little faith.
Yeah.
Don't you have any faith in me? Haven't you known me? Haven't you seen me? And so he's actually rebuking him a little bit for being upset with him when he's in total control.
Yeah.
And he knows he is, and they just don't believe it yet.
Yeah. And the thing that we need to remember, that should teach us an important lesson, is that, just because we have God with us doesn't mean that we're not going to go through trials and tribulations. We're not going to get, persecuted. There are people that are actively getting persecuted because of their belief in God. Mm-hmm. So just because God is with us doesn't keep that stuff from happening, right? Because Jesus was in the boat and the storm still happened.
Yeah.
We just got to remember who's in the boat with us.
Yeah.
And let that guide us. Let that comfort us. Like, yeah, no, I'm going through some stuff, but I got Jesus in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because we don't hear his voice doesn't mean he's not right here with us.
Yeah. I think the 21 that were marched out on the beach, they all had that, we know Jesus is with us, and we're either here with him or we'll be there with him. I mean, they had to, for 20 of them to be followers of Christ, and one of them coming on and said, nope, their God is my God, and dying with them. That man and all those 20 others were thinking, no, Jesus is with me. I'm sticking here, and I'll be with him. If they behead me on this beach, that's fine. Yeah. But I'll be with him today. So I think we have to all get to that point, because Jesus tells us it's going to be a rough road and it's going to be hard, but he's with you, and he's told us all that. So we have to have that faith in him that we're like, it's like David Small. He's in a trench getting shot at by a sniper. You can either get up and help the people that need help, or you can stay in this trench and be safe for the moment. Because you're not safe when you don't do what God says. We've seen that in these stories too. Mm-hmm. You're only safe when you do what he says. And if you go down with the boat and you're with Jesus in the next minute, you're not going to feel like it was a loss. You're going to feel like it was a gain. So the 21 on the beach, it was a gain for them. And so that's where we need to be in our mind and how we think today.
So the next story is it's similar. I think it's another story that a lot of people kind of know, but if we look at Matthew 14, the disciples are in a boat, and we'll have Kyle read it here in a second, but disciples are in a boat, they're crossing the Sea of Galilee in a storm, and they see Jesus walking on the water. So
okay. Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on the mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already considered a distance from land. It says, buffeted by the waves, because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." "Lord, if it is you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink. Cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?"
Well, thank you. So, I think I'm trying to find my words real quick. Sorry.
You're right.
So, we'll just go in. What do people typically miss about the story, right? I think a lot of people criticize Peter because, he has the faith, he gets out of the boat, and then he immediately, when he takes his eyes off of Jesus, he begins to sink, and he had the faith and he lost it. Yeah. They criticize Peter, but they forget about the other 11 that were in the boat that were so afraid they never had the courage to actually step out.
Yeah.
I think it's something that...
And Peter, he saw an opportunity there. Yeah. So Peter wanted to be like the top dog, right? He had a little of that in him, and I wonder if that's what caused him to say, "Hey, command me to step out of the boat. I want to be the one to be like you." and he does, and then his faith fails him because he takes his eyes off Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of the story is we take our eyes off Jesus, and that's when things fail.
Yeah.
But I think, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I'm thinking Peter wanted to be that top guy and says, hey, I'll be the one. You just tell me. You tell me, right? He says, command me to walk on the water.
Yeah, and he does walk on it.
Yeah.
So one thing we learn there is if we do what Jesus says, the things that Jesus has told us will happen. And so, there is another man who's walked on water. His name's Peter, and he did it with Jesus. So, it's all you're able to do the things that Jesus says you're able to do as long as you have faith in him. The minute you doubt, you're going to sink.
Exactly.
And then you're the one of little faith.
And that's the way that I took the story, is that, Peter had the faith. And he's like, if you command me to do it, it's like, I know that it's impossible, but if you command me to do it, I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. And so Jesus commands it, and he said, okay. And he steps out in obedience, and he's walking on water.
Yeah.
But again, immediately upon shifting his focus away from Jesus, and he starts looking at the waves and then feeling the wind and everything that's going on around him, that's when he starts to sink.
Yeah. And there's something I really love about this story, because not only does it show that we can do all these things with Jesus, it also shows us how feeble our minds work. Because every time I think about Peter walking on the water and Peter seeing all these miracles, and we talk about how can you have the Red Sea crossed and then go against God? How can you do all these things after you've seen all these wonderful miracles? Well, here's Peter, who is the one who walked on water, knows it's possible, seen the storms calm, seen all these things, and yet the days that are coming ahead where Jesus is going to be crucified, he's going to deny him 3 times and say, I don't know him. And I think a lot of that comes back to our lack of understanding of what our Father in heaven is trying to accomplish in redeeming us. And so sometimes we just go to what we see immediately instead of trusting that what's the future plan is worth it. I think all of us would die for everyone in our family if we knew all of them were going to be saved. We'd be like, oh, now that's an easy no-brainer. Well, who's saying that's not what's happening when you're following Christ? Why do you fall away from those things? Why do you not go tell the next person? Why do you not put yourself, maybe, in a country far away being shot at? Why don't you go do these things? The future that's coming is more. So Jesus had to die. They didn't understand that at the time. They just see their Lord being killed. Once they understood that, they all came to a place where they were willing to die, which is where we should be.
Yeah.
And this is another instance where Jesus is training Peter, right?
Yeah.
Peter's going to become the rock that the church is built on.
Yeah.
And he's getting training, and he actually walks on water.
Yeah.
Even for a short bit, but he does, and he's getting training. And even though he falls back a little bit, that's still part of his training, so that after he denies him 3 times and after Christ rises, Peter's understanding starts to come back, and all these little bits of training that God did along the way start to come into play. And then Peter becomes bold, of course, with the help of the Holy Spirit. Peter becomes bold and just goes out there, man, and says, this is it. And had he not had all these bits of training, even though he failed, had he not had all these, he wouldn't have been able to be where he was, to be used as the rock that Jesus wanted him to be.
Which is a great point, because even though you're out there failing and you're struggling, and Jesus still finds a way to use you down the road. And then look what Peter became. He was willing to be sacrificed upside down. He said, I'm not worthy of being sacrificed the way Jesus was. So he was crucified upside down, and he accepted that. His faith was full blown at that point. He's not going to turn away again. So that's where we all have to get to, where we won't turn away again.
Yep. So what does this story reveal about God? If we look at Peter, when he's sinking, what's he do? He cries out to Jesus.
Yeah.
And then what's Jesus do? Immediately reaches out and
Yeah.
grabs him. So we can take that to heart, knowing that when we feel like we're sinking, we can cry out to God.
Yeah.
And that he is going to reach out and he's going to grab us.
So many things you can take from these stories as you read through them in there. Every time you read them, you catch something new.
Yeah. And something for us, like as humans, like it can teach us that fear has it's got this way of that it can shift focus, right? And redirect our attention away from what matters. If we look at the instance for Peter, the storm was already going on, right? The waves were really, they're roaring and it's rocking the boat pretty good, and the wind is howling. All that stuff's already going on when he climbs out of the boat, right? And he's still walking on water.
Yeah.
But he notices it again after he's already out there, and then that's when the fear creeps in, and then that's when he starts to sink. So
our mind tells us there's a physical reality, and our mind is focused on that physical reality. He was focused on Jesus, on the spiritual, but his mind focused him back on the wind, the waves, the storm, and that's what we have to guard against, that our mind just doesn't take us back to quote unquote reality, what we see in front of us, because what we see in front of us is not always what God has planned and what's going to be the outcome, although we sometimes look at that and say, I don't see any other outcome available.
Yeah. The circumstances never changed. It was his focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. The next story, it's a little bit later in the New Testament. We're going to go to Acts chapter 9. And do we want to read any of this, or do we just want to?
I think we can just go through it.
All right.
Yeah.
So there was. I'm pretty sure everybody is familiar with Paul, right, or Saul at this time. He's going around. He's persecuting followers of Jesus, and he has this encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus, to the point where Saul is blinded. All right.
And just to give a little bit more background there, Saul is a Pharisee, a Pharisee of Pharisees. He's a devout Jew who is going to crush this uprising that is the belief in Jesus. He's going to crush it. I mean, he is well known in the area, and he is known to arrest people, to mistreat people, to kill people, to do all these things in the name of God, not Jesus. In the name of God, he's going to do that because he's on his rules and regulations, and he is on that, and that is well known. So just tee that up a little bit there.
So Saul, he's doing all this persecution. He has this encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus. Jesus is so bright with this brilliant light when he encounters him that it blinds Saul. So in steps a man named Ananias, all right? So I just want to make sure I get my notes right because I don't want to get anything out of order. So God sends an angel, or he's speaking to Ananias, and he's saying, hey, there's a man named Saul who's going to be coming into town. You're going to find him. He tells him exactly where he's going to find him. He's like, I want you to go there and basically go to him and kind of give him aid. And Ananias responds to God. He's like, yeah, I've heard about this guy. He's been, persecuting a lot of people that were following Jesus, which Ananias was a follower of Christ.
Yeah.
So he's like, I know what he's been doing to people like me,
Yeah.
And you want me to go take care of him?
You want me to go to him and care for him?
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So, but he does. He obeys. He goes to Saul and he cares for him. So, what do people miss about the story? Like, Ananias had a rational fear. Like, he had a legit reason to be afraid. Like, he's going around. He's beating. He's He's beating. He's killing. He's throwing people in jail that believe the same thing that I believe. And you're sending me to him.
Yeah.
And so he had a legit fear, and he still chose to obey God and go.
Yeah, he believes God enough, but he doesn't have the full picture yet. He doesn't know who Saul becomes, that God's going to use him. He just knows what's has been in the past, and he says, okay, Lord, I trust you. I believe you. I will do what you say. But man, you better be taking care of me while I'm doing this, kind of thing. And the outcome is that here's somebody who's trusting God, and look what goes on to happen with Paul beyond this. And if this one person doesn't trust God, now God can do anything. He can use somebody else. But if he doesn't trust God and go do this for Saul, does Saul become Paul? Mm-hmm. Does Paul become this
important missionary?
Yeah, a missionary for 20 years out there. Does he become this apostle? Does he become this main focus and this prolific writer of the Bible? If Ananias doesn't go do this. Now, again, God could have found another way.
Yeah.
But Ananias' small act of sacrifice, and it's not quite small. I mean, you're going taking care of somebody that could take you out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But he's got a small act of sacrifice, and believing in God changes the whole future of the Christian church.
And Ananias brought this fear to God, right? He says, like, hey, I've heard of him. I know what he does to people like me. But God says, I have plans for this man. Like, he's going to be an instrument for me. Mm-hmm. And that's enough for Ananias to, like, okay. And he obeys. And you can see that when he walks into the house. And how does he greet Saul? He greets him by saying, Brother Saul. Like, he knows that he is going to be used by God as his instrument to basically further what Jesus' teachings were.
Yeah. That's one thing when you said, what do we miss in those? I think sometimes what we miss is that when you're called to go to somebody or to talk to somebody or something like that, God's already prepared the other person's heart. I mean, He's already prepared Paul. He's blinded him. He's already shown up to him. Ananias is like, he doesn't know that part yet, Yeah. I mean, he does find that out, but it's like, he doesn't know yet. He's like, oh, this dude, what he doesn't know is he's already been prepared. Paul's already been prepared. Paul has been prepared. And so it's like the same thing I see all the time when people are witnessing to individuals. They're like, no, this person, I know them. Because they'll get this feeling like I need to talk to this person, but they're like, no, I know this dude. He is not very nice.
Yeah.
And then once they start talking to him, they're like, so many times that person will say, I feel like God sent you to me right now. I can't believe this because this just happened. So you have to have faith that Jesus, when you feel called to talk to somebody, he's already prepared the other person's heart, situation, whatever they're going through, so that it softened their heart.
Yeah.
That's a great story because Ananias is having that same fear we're having of, what if this person doesn't, are you sure? Because I have that a lot.
What if they reject me? They don't like me.
Yeah, or, what could happen here, so we don't go. Well, we should go because we have to trust that Jesus will soften that person's heart now or maybe 10 years later. One of the most wonderful witnesses I ever saw was on Ray Comfort. A man came back 10 years to talk to him and said, what you told me that day. He was mad as mad, walked away before he ever got to the end of the story. Came back 10 years later. He said that finally he had watched a video. His wife or somebody had brought it up and he had finally seen it. He's like, that's what I missed. I missed the whole best part. And they ended up starting a ministry and doing the same thing. And he came back 10 years later and said, because of you, this is what's happened. Yeah. So he'd already prepared him somewhat. It's just, you got to go in it. It doesn't always go like you think it's going to, but you still have to know that Jesus, he's still preparing that person's heart.
And your simple act of kindness today could lead to the next Billy Graham.
Yeah.
An evangelist who goes out and brings revival to the world.
Yeah.
And you don't know that at the time. It just takes one person to do their small part.
Yeah.
Because God is actually doing the rest of it. And God will orchestrate the rest as long as you do your part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Josh Howerton, have you seen that?
Yeah.
Where he sat and he was talking about that minister that he went and talked to, and he got called to during 9/11, I think, the minister that he went to talk to. This is on, what's this show? Sean Ryan. If you watch the Sean Ryan show, I don't promote Sean Ryan all the time, but Josh Howerton, if you get a chance to watch that interview, it's like 3 hours long, but it's phenomenal. They go through a bunch of stuff. And there's one point where he's talking about being a minister, and he wanted to talk to the biggest, I guess he ran the biggest church or second biggest church, and this minister put time aside for him. Well, then 9/11 happens, but he keeps his word to Josh, and so he's talking to Josh, and the people are like, do you know what he gave up to come talk to you today? And because of that, you look at Josh Howerton today and the kind of minister he is today, and that hit him hard. It's just amazing that vow that you made and you kept it, what God grows in that. Because this Josh Howerton, his church is like 30,000 people and millions, nationwide. And, there's a bunch of people who see his stuff and I'm sure have accepted Christ because of it. Even in the comments, I read a woman's comment. She's like, my husband wouldn't watch anyone, but he will watch Josh, and he has been baptized in the last month or something, and it's like that guy doesn't go to his church, but it's like, look what that minister taking just a little bit of time to talk to Josh about. Aside from his parents, Josh always gives his parents. But
still that influence, all the different influences along the way add up. The little things here and here and here. Saul had influence from his parents, right? Saul had influence of training, and he was with Gamaliel, the highest ranking rabbi of the time, and he had all that training. But that simple act of kindness coming in from Ananias, really helps Paul in his conversion and go on to be the apostle he's going to be.
Nothing taken away from Jesus showing up on the road and blinding you pretty much sets you in line. But, as far as that goes, he's going to.
But Jesus is orchestrating the whole thing, and he's got all the moving parts, and you're just doing your part.
Yep. Yeah. And then what you said about his parents and being a Pharisee is just more credibility to his story. You don't think Jesus had that all planned from the very beginning? He knew Paul was going to write the books of the Bible. He knew he was going to do this. He knew he was going to meet him on the road. It was all prep. And it's like, he's got all this figured out, so when he sends you, go.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we're wanting to know the entire scenario, right? We want to know everything before we actually, okay, I'll go do that. Like, if we're feeling led to do something, like, all right, well, why do you want me to go here? How are they going to respond to me? Are they going to greet me? Are they going to try to kill me? We
want the outcome before it gets there. I
want to know everything about the plan, and then I'll go ahead and agree. I'll obey then. But that's not the way that we're supposed to do it. That's not the way that Ananias was. He didn't know the ways that God was actually working in Saul's life at that time. He just knew, hey, you want me to go take care of this man who's been persecuting and killing and jailing people like me? Okay. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to step out and obey.
And how many times do we do something and we're not sure if there's any effect to it or not? We go speak to that person, but it doesn't seem to make any change or have an effect, and maybe that person does have a change, and it's not like Ray Comfort where the guy comes back 10 years later and tells him. Maybe that person goes off, you never hear from him again, and maybe you don't know, but God's using that, and God could be doing all kinds of stuff that you don't know about. So even if you do talk to someone and you don't think they're changed or have any kind of reaction, or you didn't waste your time, you were obedient to God, and that's a great thing for you, and God will bless you for that, and it's a great thing for the person, and God will do whatever he has planned. We do not know the big master plan.
And if you talk to somebody and they are just like that man I talked about from Ray Comfort that comes back 10 years, I'm sure Ray's talked to a lot of people and over the years, and there's many that have come to Christ because of something he might have said years ago, even though they may not have agreed, and he'll never know about it, not till he's on the other side. But you can always pray for everyone who you've ever talked to and ask that their hearts keep being softened. That's something that as you offer your prayers up before God, he hears them. So just have faith that he will continue to put people in those places, and that those people will eventually come to faith through some way, some person. Ultimately, Jesus will open their eyes. But you got to be faithful and at least try to take the scales from someone, but ultimately Jesus does that work, and you just have to have faith that you don't get to walk on the water unless you're looking at Jesus. Peter gets to walk on the water when he has faith in Jesus. We get to see people's hearts soften when we have faith in Jesus, and that's the only way you're going to have someone come to Christ is by you having faith in Jesus, and then they will have faith in Jesus. The right things will come to you at the time, and you may not even feel like the right things, but later someone might go, I never saw it that way. And you might have thought you messed up. I did. I had an individual that I actually got the privilege of hearing him say that. Like what you said, I couldn't get it out of my mind. And I was like, I thought I really screwed up on this thing. I thought I messed the whole thing up. I did for a lot of years. I think I made it worse.
Yeah.
And instead I made it, he told me his marriage was saved and all kinds of stuff. I was like, it was just blowing my mind. I was like, what a blessing, So just remember, Jesus prepares the hearts of those you speak to.
So, do you have any? That was our last story that we're going to talk about today. But do you guys have any closing thoughts about letting fear take over?
Well, I think that we have the same opportunities that these people in the Bible have, and I think God comes to us, and I think sometimes we miss them if our heart's not prepared, if we're not reading the Word, if we're not going to God in prayer, meditating. I think we miss opportunities, and I think we've talked about it before. Maybe we're looking for this great big opportunity that we know is going to work, and it's locked in, and I'm going to be part of it. But the simple act of telling someone that Jesus loves you, that His grace is for you, that your sins can be forgiven, and that you can live for eternity, that simple act is still the basic thing that we need to do on a daily basis. Yeah. We need to not be afraid to share that. And if there's someone that is not saved and you think about them, you're thinking about them because God's putting them on your heart. And if you're thinking about them, you should share with them. A very good friend of ours died, and his celebration of life was yesterday. A great guy. And I remember about a year ago, he lived down the road from us, and we'd been friends for a long time. And I remember he had cancer, and he'd been battling it, but I just had this feeling that I should go talk to him. And I went down, and I had half-hour, 45-minute conversation with him. He wasn't doing real well that day, but he was happy to see me and, kind enough to have me in and visit a little bit. I never thought much of it. But at the funeral, they were talking about all the visits that he got from people and how he appreciated that, and I never thought much of it, but other people. So God is asking you to do something, asking other people that went to visit this man and, be with him as he's suffering. He had cancer for 13 years, I guess, and was fighting it the whole time with different treatments, and it kept coming back, and he just kept fighting. But you may not know, that has any impact at all, but you have those opportunities. And I look back now, and I'm like, I'm really glad I went down and talked to him. Well, hey, I can't talk to him anymore. Yeah. He's gone. I really wish I'd have gone down 5 more times and talked to him. He just lived half mile down the road, or mile down the road, and that kind of thing. But definitely we have those opportunities, and God's giving them to us. Don't let them pass you by.
Yeah. Couple things. The first thing I'll say is that, like Jim said, everybody's been given these opportunities to go tell. If a believer doesn't go tell the rest of the world, who will?
Yeah.
It was given to us as the Great Commission to go and do these things. So it's our obligation to our Father in heaven and His Son to go tell the good news of Christ to everyone around. And so I would say pick up that cross, no matter what it means, and tell those around you that you love, and just the ones you love, which should be everybody. But just the ones you love, the ones you really want to see in heaven. Just go tell them, But that's kind of a joke, but really you should find a way to love everyone that God created as your brother and sister, and tell every single one of them. Because when you're sitting there looking at them, you should be going, in their sins and in their, the worst of the worst. Just remember, we just read it. Cain and Abel. Cain was not killed by God. He was given a chance. And we're supposed to go out into the world and be the light, and we're supposed to reflect that. So that's the first thing, is go and tell everyone you can about the good news of Christ. The second thing is, when we're talking about all these Bible stories, and we're trying to really get people to get excited about going back and looking in the Bible and getting to know our Father in heaven. And the stories that you read as a believing Christian become very enjoyable to read. And so pick somebody like Gideon or Isaiah or someone to get to know and to kind of see how God works with that person within the stories. Because if you get to know your Father in heaven, the love for him just grows and grows and grows. So the reason we're doing these Bible stories is just so people can kind of go, I think I want to get into the Word, and I really, really want to know my Father and his Son.
And it just kind of shows that there's something you can take from every story that is in the Bible. There's something that you can take from it, even if it's like the smallest, shortest story.
Yeah,
it might seem insignificant. There's something that you can pull from it.
Yeah,
and
it'll meet you right where you are a lot of times.
Exactly.
And you told me to remind you before we wrap up that you wanted to cover.
Yeah, that was going to be my closing comment or whatever. But I was watching a video, I think it was this past week, and it was a pastor during a sermon. He's like, imagine like you get to heaven and then you see like all the big names from the Bible. Think like the Mount Rushmore from the Bible. You see David, you're running up to him like, David, what was it like, facing off against, David, or face off against Goliath, and then, being chased by Saul and all this stuff. And then you run into, to Paul and you're like, man, what was it like to going out there and, doing all the work and the missions and all this, like, and you're talking to all these guys and like, man, don't worry about that. Like, what was it like? Like you were living with the Spirit of God, like the entire time that you were there. Like what'd you do? And you imagine if all you have like, well, I went to church on Sunday I shared a post on Facebook every now and then. You have all this at our fingertips now.
Yeah.
All this not like we were talking about at the beginning of the show. Like it's easy for us to look in the Bible now, all these stories, and think like, man, how could you possibly doubt knowing everything that you knew, like all the evidence that you had at the time? How could you possibly still have doubts? And then here we are, we have the entire Bible, the accumulation of all of these stories, all of history that up until now, all the evidence.
Yeah.
And yet, what are we doing with it?
Yeah. We have the Holy Spirit being given to us.
We have the Holy Spirit dwelling within us.
Yeah.
What are we doing with it? And just ask yourself that. And if you kind of feel a little convicted and you're like, well, I go to church on Sunday. I go to,
that's a good thing.
It is a good thing, but like we are called to do more.
Yeah.
Look at these Bible stories, don't let fear control you, right? Everybody's got fear. We don't want to step out of our comfort zone. So I would say, look at the Bible stories that we're talking about today. Look at the interview that we had with David last week.
Yeah.
And you have to look inwardly, like, what am I doing? What am I called to do? Where am I not obeying because I'm too afraid?
Yeah.
And then, just like David was saying last week, like 30 seconds of courage. Step out of your comfort zone. Take 30 seconds of courage. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised about what happens.
Can I say one more thing? Because you just hit something. We see, by the cover of night, Gideon's doing this. Sometimes I think it's okay to do it by the cover of night. So if you're like, I need to tell everybody, but I'm too afraid, write it on a letter and pass it around where nobody knows it's you. I mean, you can do it by the cover of night, basically. And it's still okay. You're still being obedient until you get to a place where you can do it in the daytime.
God didn't tell Gideon that what he did didn't count because he did
exactly. That's my point. If you got to do it by the cover of night until you can do it during the day, do what you got to do.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and close out in prayer and end the episode. Lord and Heavenly Father, creator of the heavens and the earth, Father, we thank you for reminding us that fear does not have to control us. Help us to trust you when the situation feels uncertain and then when we don't know how things are going to turn out. Lord, we ask that you give us courage to obey Give us courage to obey you, even when we're afraid. Help us to keep our eyes on you instead of the storm, and remind us that your presence is greater than anything that we're going to face. We love you. It's in Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for this week's episode. I hope we enjoyed this week and last week. And there's a lot of stuff that you can take away from it. And we should have more episodes like this coming up. So, if this is the type of content you like to see, make sure you let us know. And we do listen to if you guys have suggestions. So if there's anything particular you want us to cover, or if you don't like the way that we might be pivoting or the direction that we're going, let us know. Give us feedback. And we're trying to do this for you guys. What you guys like to listen to or what you like to take out of it. So if you have any suggestions, let us know. But if there's nothing else, well, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Raw Christian Men's Podcast. If this episode challenged you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs truth, not comfort. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, and leave a review. It helps this message reach men who are ready to grow. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and be part of the conversation. Have questions, feedback, or want to share your story? Email us at rawchristianmenspodcast@gmail.com. Most importantly, don't just listen, live it. Lead your family, strengthen your faith, stand firm in Christ. We'll see you next time.